They worked. They were always on time. They were never late. They never spoke back when they were insulted. They worked. They never went on strike without permission. They never took days off that were not on the calendar. They worked 10 days a week and were only paid for 5. They worked, they worked, they worked and they died. They died broke. They died owing. They died never knowing what the front entrance of the First National City Bank looks like. Juan, Miguel, Milagro, Olga, Manuel, all died yesterday, today, and will die again tomorrow, passing their bill collectors on to the next of kin. All die waiting for the Garden of Eden to open up again under a new management. All die dreaming about America, waking them up in the middle of the night, screaming, "Mira, mira, your name is on the winning lottery ticket for $100,000. All die hating the grocery stores that sold them make-believe steak and bulletproof rice and beans. All die dreaming, hating, and waiting. Dead Puerto Ricans who never knew they were Puerto Ricans, who never took a coffee break from the 10 Commandments to kill, kill, kill the landlords of their cracked skulls and communicate with their Latin souls. Juan, Miguel, Milagro, Olga, Manuel, from the nervous breakdown streets where the mice live like millionaires and the people do not live at all. They are dead, and will not return from the dead until they stop neglecting the art of their dialogue for broken English lessons to impress the system who keeps them employed as lavaplatos, porters, messenger boys, factory workers, maids, stock clerks, shipping clerks, assistant mailroom assistant to the assistant lavaplatos, and automatic artificial smile endowment for the lowest wages of the ages and rages when you demand a raise because it's against the company policies to promote speaks. Here lies Juan, here lies Miguel, here lies Milagros, here lies Olga, here lies Manuel, who died yesterday, today, and will die again tomorrow, always broke, always owing, never knowing that they are beautiful people.
Welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vrettos. I'm a sociologist who's taught at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and Yeshiva University here in New York City. Thomas Jefferson declared back in 1786 that the United States must be, quote, viewed as the nest from which all America, North and South, is to be peopled. This is what we're ready to receive, as he put it. Noam Chomsky has written that the United States is the one country that exists or ever has existed that was founded as an empire explicitly. While never officially identifying itself and its territorial possessions as an empire, American imperialism, the expansion of American political, economic, military, cultural, and media influence and might beyond its boundaries, began at the expense of Native Americans. It's continued up through the present through policies and doctrines such as, among others, American exceptionalism, the Monroe Doctrine, manifest destiny, white man's burden, neocolonialism, and numerous interventionist wars and attempts of regime changes around the world. These policies have been primarily interested in opening up and securing international markets to surplus U.S. production. In practice, these attempts to politically and economically dominate has always been and continues to be the underlying reason for the massive Latino presence in the United States. That includes the almost 3 million Puerto Ricans whose colonial status allows them to live in America as de jure citizens. In reality, they continue to be regarded and treated as second-class, de facto foreigners. This largely overlooked history of revolution and terror in Puerto Rico, from the United States invasion in 1898 to over 50 years of military occupation and colonial rule, from the unsuccessful armed insurrection in 1950 to the modern-day struggle for self-determination and independence, is the subject matter of our guest, Nelson Denis's classic work, War Against All Puerto Ricans. Denis was the editorial director of El Diario, the largest Spanish-language newspaper in New York City. He's a graduate of Harvard University and Yale Law School. He served as a New York State Assemblyman from East Harlem from 1997 to 2001, and has written and directed many feature films. Primarily, the one we are going to be talking about today is Vote for Me, which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. Nelson, thank you so very, very much for being here. It is really an honor and a pleasure to meet you for the first time, although we've been talking before the show, and there's so much to talk about with this incredible book, The War Against All Puerto Ricans. I thought I'd start by giving our audience a little bit of an idea of your writing style, which is so lyrical and just so moving and passionate. And this is how your book starts. My mother was Puerto Rican. My father was Cuban. They worked very hard, and we lived in a small but spotless apartment in New York City's Washington Heights. I was 8 years old when men from the FBI banged on our door at 3 a.m. No one understood what was happening. My mother screamed, my grandmother cried, and I hid behind a curtain. The FBI agents grabbed my father and took him away. We never saw him again. It was October 1962, the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and someone had denounced my father as a spy. There was no trial or administrative hearing, no evidence of due process. He was simply deported to Cuba. A few months later, Attorney General Robert Kennedy received his annual Immigration and Naturalization Service report, which stated, investigation of Cuban refugees increased during this year. Under this pressure, a number of Cubans alleged to be subversive departed prior to the completion of the investigations. These included your father, Antonio Denis Jordan, suspected Cuban G2 agent in New York City. He was an elevator operator and a member of the Janitors Union, 32BJ SEIU. He supported the Cuban Revolution and spoke in favor of it. He was a Cuban patriot, but he was not a spy. So, what a way to open a book. Personally, with family tragedy and how the political history of what Puerto Rico had been through for many, many years, you got a very early, intimate experience of that. And so this is what got you started with the book, right? And you expanded it to put this within a much greater social context and historical context, correct?
Well, I just had first of all, Jim, you had me at hello. I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. It's my honor.
You know, Felipe, our mutual friend, in absentia, he's still
yes, he's our friend, and Felipe Luciano was supposed to come with us today. He did get sick, but we'll have him on. We'll do this again.
He has a very quiet command. He called me, he said, Nelson, I need you to come to this on Jim's show. He said, I said, well, Felipe, I can't. You know, who am I to defy? You know,
no,
I'll be there.
We don't defy Felipe.
But your question is,
thank you.
What I was undergoing was a life experience. I mean, I was 8 years old. I wasn't aware of. You know, all I know is my father was, suddenly gone.
Right.
And it takes some time to, the benefit of very long range and highly nuanced hindsight to realize how little vector sums, little things that move you one direction or another early on, they predetermine so many things in your life. And that I've become aware that that is part of my Puerto Rican experience. The fact that emotionally, psychologically, almost neurologically, there's a sense of a glass ceiling, a limit to your imagination and to possibilities. There are things that I wanted to do. I mean, I worked really hard, but there was, there was always a sense of limitation or foreboding. And that's part of the Puerto Rican character.
It's a huge, I mean, you can't, it's a traumatic, incredible traumatic experience. So, what?
So here's what happened.
So gradually, the sense you made.
My father was not a spy. He didn't speak very good English. So what kind of a spy are you going to be? You can't, you're spying on a country you don't understand, what's going on. But he did have extensive meetings, and that's what made him a target. People came every Saturday. He was an inspiring guy. He was big and solid. He used to be a soccer player.
But it's America, right? That's what it's supposed to be about.
Well, he came here. That's how he met my mother. They were working in the garment district, sewing belts. What could be more, American, the immigrant experience of coming and working for sub-minimum wages. They weren't a member of ILGWU. I guess they had, a lot of shared life. They were going through so much that was in common that it made sense for them to get married.
She was born also, right, in Puerto Rico.
My mother was born in Caguas.
And your father was
My father was born in the Canary Islands.
Originally
Spanish and French.
Okay.
When he went to Cuba, he was born, essentially raised in Cuba. He was radicalized by what he saw there by the time that he came here. What I didn't realize is how formative these, and you look back, you say, now I understand how these things that influence my character, my decision making, my sense of how I react.
But you reacted by being a really, really good student.
I was a fat kid, right?
Yeah.
But I was smart.
Very slim.
And that was my cudgel. That was my sort of there was a sword of Damocles over our family because Mom suddenly, when they took my father away, she suddenly had to, with her seamstress salary, she had 3 mouths to feed: my grandmother, herself, and me. And so I think instinctively I realized that we didn't have much margin for error. And the one thing that I could do was just not be any additional burden or problem. And I kind of enjoyed the one thing that I was good at, which was I was a good student. It just happened that and apparently I didn't realize that for all of that turmoil and all that suffering, my mother, my family, they created a peaceful home. Somehow it was filled with love and security. I never missed a meal. I had enough sense of self and self-esteem that it was, for me, was inarguable. Of course I was going to go to. Of course I was going to go to. And that was created by these 2 beautiful women, my mom and my grandma. My father, he was the disciplinarian. He made me start reading at age 3, reading Bohemia, the Cuban Revolutionary magazine. I remember crying, but by the time I went to school, I could read it in Spanish, fairly well. English was not my first language. I went to school. Essentially, the only thing I read, I watched Looney Tunes, the Mickey Mouse Club, and Modern Farmer at 6 in the morning on Saturdays.
I think I vaguely remember that Modern, and they would tell you what the
tractor,
the weather is going to be today and how to sow your wheat. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, weird shows, but anyway, yeah. So, but 5 o'clock in the morning, you were up watching this and probably reading and stuff. So these women really shielded you from this trauma and pain. But as you got older, you never felt. Let me put it this way, because I know you.
I never felt. I never felt poor, and I never felt limitation. Not consciously. But there were things that, the life has a way of shaping, and you're malleable.
But did you feel that you were part of a colonialized people? Did you have that mindset? Was that given to you? So it doesn't seem like it was.
No,
at that point.
I did know. But on some level, I knew that someone could come and take my father at 3 in the morning, and I'd never see him again. That is like, that's a very profound incursion into your psyche. So although I didn't...
But the connection was because of the political viewpoints in support of independence of Puerto Rico. I mean, you didn't put that
No.
That took a while for
I
that
didn't
to develop,
even realize,
right?
I mean, the Cuban Missile Crisis. I didn't put
Right,
one
right,
and two
no,
together.
sure.
But they were they bureaucrat. People heads were rolling. People didn't want to lose their jobs. They got caught, short with suddenly these missiles. So everybody was like musical chairs, and my father was an easy target. He didn't speak very good English. He had dozens of people. I can say this now. My father was recruiting people. He was collecting money, medicine, and armaments. I was really impressed as I saw, they had this hope chest filled, with big, I don't know what kind of gun, but they were very, I said, wow, I mean, my father was into something, but he wasn't shooting those guns. He was just, he was an organizer.
Okay, okay.
But they turned that into accusing him of being a G2 spy. G2, by the way, is like MI6, MI5, or 007. It's like license to kill level of spy.
Yeah, your father doesn't sound like that. No, he wasn't like. But when did this sort of political, historical consciousness about all of this come to your mind? Was it at Harvard there, or how long did that take?
It was personal.
Right.
Because
how was it growing up in you were in Washington Heights there, right?
I grew up in Washington Heights. I got a scholarship unwittingly. I never heard of the place, a place called Taft in Connecticut. Okay. And I got a full scholarship. The reason I went there is because they had soccer teams with uniforms. That for me was dispositive. I said, because I really
You were still this
soccer.
big husky kid?
I was still pretty, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
well, they're husky. We'll call you husky.
That's what they,
Well,
yeah, they don't have husky anymore, do they?
I was husky too. So yeah, no, they probably don't. Anyway.
Yeah,
but you're not husky now anyway. So the point is, so you went to Taft, you said?
To this,
tell me.
I'm sorry, I don't mean I'll look at the camera on this, but I'm proud. I call up every year to make sure that my record is intact. So I'm this Puerto Rican kid. I'm full scholarship at Taft, and to this day, I'm the only student to get 100 on the algebra final exam.
Wow, yeah.
At Taft. And when I did that, I think it sent repercussions to the faculty. They were like, this kid,
How much did it mean to be? You just said that I'm a Puerto Rican kid. How much of that did you? Did
it was
that
a vindication
really sink
because I
in?
knew I was a smart kid.
Right.
So, but I was really happy that I was smarter than these motherfuckers. I'm sorry. That these white guys.
We can say whatever. Yeah.
I said, and I just quietly, I was just me. I think I was pretty obnoxious. The upperclassmen didn't like me because I was. Really
so far, you sound like a real, if I may, a Jewish kid who is getting back at
you to Connecticut.
I'll get back at you.
Should be paid to such a Puerto Rican.
Yeah. So here you are, and then So the consciousness begins.
Best year. I'm sorry. We're not quite.
No,
we're just having a good
conversation.
We're going to have. The happiest year of my life was my first year at Taft because I got into fights at Washington Heights all the time. They accused me of being Jewish. People that Puerto Rican, I go to Catholic school.
Double whammy.
Yeah, because I was this pain in the ass kid. I wouldn't just raise my hand. I would be this. Nobody liked me. So I got into fights all the time. I mean, they would. And my style of fighting was really jejune. I would say, go ahead, hit me, go ahead, hit me. They would hit me. I said, hit me again, because I'm kind of a peaceful guy. So I had to get into a blind rage. So they would hit me like 10 times.
No.
And at that point, I'm ready to fight. But the fight's over. I've already been hit 10 times.
Rope-a-doping, even then.
I learned how to fight by getting beat up a lot. So I became tough, sort of inadvertently.
You're a smart guy. That doesn't sound too smart, but I get your point.
When I got the tap, you know what happened at Tap?
No.
They sent me to.
Remember, we got your whole book to go through. And
there was this guy, remember, his name is Richard Manners. It's not liable. Richard, we were playing around without going in depth. And they stuck me in a closet and they put a bureau. And then but here's the thing: he opened the closet, he called me a spick, and he spat on me.
Wow. With this waspy sort of blonde guy, Biff or something.
It sort of penetrated that that veneer. Something just. I thought I was in a friendly place, but that one. And so here's what I became so blind. I just. That a mother can, when they lift a child, they can lift this.
Yeah. You got the adrenaline going.
And then I went kind of blank for like 5 minutes, and I just pummeled them all around the room, and somebody finally had to stop me.
Really?
And then he was down for 2 weeks. He got his orthodontia. They had, apparently, and so nobody bothered me after that attack. No, because this guy, I was still kind of a little chunky.
No, I get it.
He's smart, but that guy, he's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Well, I'm pulling you toward because so your energy started getting channeled
Well, it was at
Someone
Harvard.
more
It was at
productive.
Harvard.
Okay.
Went to Harvard. They have 3 million books. They pride themselves on having 7 miles of books. They have subterranean chambers and wider, like 12 floors. And so I was curious about Don Pedro Albizu Campos, the seminal, pivotal Puerto Rican in our history. And he he was the first Puerto Rican to go to Harvard and Harvard Law School. And so I figured, those are good. This
was back when, in the 20s and 30s?
1972.
72?
Yeah.
When was Campos at Harvard?
1920, early 20s.
20s, yes, okay.
Yeah. Well, before that, then he went to war. He was a captain in the U.S. Army during World War I. And then
because Puerto Ricans were citizens then.
Yeah.
1917, right?
We became citizens as of 1917. That's right.
But
through the Jones-Shafroth Act.
And you'll explain all of this because it's
the difference between the Jones Act and the Jones-Shafroth Act.
Right, we'll get into that. But I mean, but you're not a
so
state, you're a Commonwealth.
I want to make this point.
Good.
So I go to Widener, and there was not one book, monograph, or piece of information on Don Pedro Albizu. I went, it was a Dewey Decimal System back then. But I got really curious about this. So I contrived to get a job as a assistant librarian, my work study, so that I could read. So for like 2 or 3 months, they were paying me to do further research. And I didn't find. I said, ain't this something? I said, there's like this missing, and so it was just, I found that really curious, and that sparked, sort of a.
Well, it's unfair. It was.
And a deep curiosity.
And a narrative that remained untold. It was necessary. Yeah.
So I kept at it, and I made it sort of like a personal pet project. I majored in government, but I didn't write. I didn't write a thesis. I should have. I could, because I wrote a pretty, a very well documented, and it was more of a labor of love.
Right.
That became the cover story of the Harvard Political Review my senior year, and it was out about the curious. It was called The Curious Constitution of Puerto Rico, and it was about the interrelation of Pedro Albizu Campos' aborted revolution in relation to the public relations battle between the Soviet Union and the United States. The United States could ill afford, as the ostensible leader of the free world, to have the only classic colony remaining on the planet. Puerto Rico.
So that was your. What was the reaction to that article?
Actually, I was surprised. The governor of Connecticut, Ned Lamont, who I knew from Harvard, from Harvard and from other mutual friends at Taft, came up to the fact that this really super waspy guy had read it in great detail, and he was really curious. He said, I had no idea about that. And I said, Ned, I didn't know this either, man. I had no idea that it's Orwellian. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But what happens in Puerto Rico never happened at all. It's like a parallel universe. In fact, the very year.
And you think that was structured? I'm sorry, because this is so interesting. So from the very beginning, this was the idea to sort of keep Puerto Rico as this paradise island that we think of, but in fact, it's being dominated and controlled by all kinds of financial instruments and economic forces from the United States. I mean, you're beginning to uncover that, right?
But I think it's unfortunately more nefarious than that, because when you can deal with intent with it, it is through absolute inattention. Like nobody, I think, really collaborated or conspired. It was just much deeper than that. It just we didn't exist. You have to realize that Puerto Rico, originally back then, was separated by 4 centuries of Ibero-American history, separated by a language, separated by technology. It would take a steamer vessel 5 days in that time to just make it from Puerto Rico up to New York or Washington. So it was really isolated. And all the information was mediated by several AP and UPI wire service reporters who would simply regurgitate.
They weren't investigative reports. No, they were just, I got it.
They would have a good time. They'd file out the reports that were given to them by the Puerto Rican government. And the Puerto Rican government consisted of U.S.-appointed governors.
Handpicked.
Yeah. Like the first, if I may, range around. Can I go into some quick history?
Absolutely. Please, our audience we would love that. Go ahead.
United States, when it was really, and Albizu Campos said, this wasn't a war, this was a Treaty of Versailles. It was, the Paris Accord was a real estate transaction where Puerto Rico was part of the spoils of war, and it was perceived as the value as a naval coaling station, so that the ships could, refuel, and it was geopolitically, well positioned. It was the first major landmass, not big, but Cuba was, off to, further away. So coming from Europe, so Puerto Rico was very well positioned, transnationally, and so that was the perceived value of Puerto Rico as a naval coaling station. And sure enough, Roosevelt Roads was the largest naval base in the world for about 30 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they had about 600 acres, and they spent $230 million, which is, current, and a lot of it on cost-plus contracts that went to U.S., it was sort of sole source, and they grew the money to U.S. contractors. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The United States goes in 1898. 1899, the largest hurricane of the century, flattened Puerto Rico, destroyed all the, the coffee crop and all the varied. Puerto Rico had a self-sustaining, diversified agriculture. It was 80% of its economy consisted of exporting agriculture back in 1898. Mm-hmm. So the United States go in 1899. It's sort of like Naomi Klein's shock capitalism. In 1899, the hurricane comes. The United States had no meaningful hurricane relief. Instead, the following year, in 1900, they devalued the Puerto Rican currency from $1 to 60 cents. They declare the currency now of Puerto Rico is going to be the U.S. dollar, and everyone has to hand in their peso, which was of roughly equivalent buying power internationally. It was based on the Spanish peso as the American dollar.
Up until that point, then depreciation.
So there was a straight-up depreciation. So now you have less.
Overnight.
Yes, and concomitantly, your debt's now are 40% higher.
Right.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, think about when the World Trade Center, we have, relative, very tragic events, but compare that to if in this country, if we all wake up with 40, every government, every municipality, every
bananas would be tolerated.
It would be a social collapse. The United States of America would no longer be the United States of America.
A revolution. There was such insurrection.
The center doesn't hold. There's no center to speak of at this point. All right, so we have a hurricane, a currency devaluation, and that's in 1901, through the Hollander Act, a steeply graduated set of property taxes that had never existed in Puerto Rico before, levied against who? The farmers, because that was the economy of Puerto Rico. So now you have these triple hits, right? Hurricane, currency devaluation. The farmers need liquidity. They're desperate to hold on to their lands. They had only one place to go. Appropriately, it was called the American Colonial Bank. That was it. It was like Phil Rizzuto at the money store. Come on down. They gave them. They just wanted to give these loans. The United States they were very aggressive,
knowing that they wouldn't be able to pay it back.
Exactly, because they didn't want the money. They wanted the land.
Right. Wow.
Now, when General Miles came in and he hoisted the Old Glory up the town flagpole in Ponce, when they...
Who's General Miles now?
General Miles was the head of the United States occupation force in the Spanish-American War in Puerto Rico. Okay. So he declares, we have come here not to dominate you, but to protect yourselves and your property and give you the blessings of enlightened civilization. To protect you, your interests, your property, and the blessings of enlightened civilization.
White man's burden.
Huh? The white man. That burden was translated 20 or 30 years later. It's
going to be your
property.
Yeah.
80% of the arable land in Puerto Rico was owned by North American banking syndicates, and they turned them into centrales, and they turned a previously diversified, self-sustaining economy into a one-crop cash cow economy that is sugar. Now, I'm sorry, I know I'm going on.
No, this is wonderful, beautiful. This is so informative. Please go on.
The first governor, American-appointed governor, is the one that sent it to Plymouth, Charles Herbert Allen. He shows up. He had been a congressman. He was, pretty well connected from Amherst, Massachusetts, and at Lowell. They had some textile mills in his family.
Right.
And he's a businessman. I mean, that's in his blood. So he comes in, and he only stayed governor for 17 months because he diverted a substantial enough portion of the Puerto Rican budget from roads, road repairs, schools. This man knew exactly what he was about. He diverted that budget to conduct soil sample studies all over Puerto Rico, and he discovered that it was amongst the most fertile land that the United States had any control over.
Right.
So he put that into his first year's fiscal report to President McKinley, but it wasn't really a fiscal report. It was a business plan for taking over the Puerto Rican economy because 2 weeks after Charles Herbert Allen, the first U.S. appointed governor of Puerto Rico, handed in that fiscal report, he renounced as governor. He went to Wall Street, got a job at Wall Street at Morgan Stanley. He became a vice president at Morgan Stanley. Then he became the treasurer, then president, then chairman of the board of the American Sugar Refining Corporation, which today is known, one of its subsidiaries today is Domino Sugar.
Domino, yeah.
Right, so now, what did he do? He
Dominate Domino.
Domino, yeah.
Domino, yeah.
So he had appointed over 660 U.S. expatriates into the Puerto Rican bureaucracy, and they were at high salaries. People who didn't speak Spanish, but now they have these highfalutin government posts in Puerto Rico. They returned the favor by giving him riparian rights, sole source contracts, bundling of lots,
all kinds of
inside information,
tax breaks.
All sorts of tax subsidies, right?
Yeah.
So when they called it Operation, Bootstrap, Vito Marcantoni called it Operation Booby Trap because it was always for the favor of the.
We're going to come in here and help you, but we're going to help ourselves. Go ahead. Yeah.
So Charles Herbert Allen became the first sugar king of Puerto Rico. He hardwired the entire American economy. He had over 600 plus people that were helping him, and when Wall Street saw the accelerated capitalist progress of this one man, because he was rapacious. I mean, it was all legal. He was appointed governor.
Yeah.
70 bonds.
It's just business as usual.
Yeah.
Business. Good business.
And that's why I said it's nefarious, because it's like governed by algorithm, and it's become more. I'm kind of jumping forward, so and then I'll reverse engineer. But right now, you can't even point at a particular enemy or a particular villain or bad guy, because a lot of these decisions are made literally the computer algorithms, and Puerto Rico is like in the rifle barrel of U.S. capital,
and no one can really be held fully accountable.
And that's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
Right. So there's been ever since Charles Herbert
or the
Allen,
evilness of it. It's structured
because it's so bad. It's like.
Yeah.
You can fight an adversary, but a zombie, it's like these, and it's like impersonal, and they just take over, and there's no reasoning with them.
That's the law. That's
and
the rules.
And they're very far away. And the lighter-skinned, better positioned, upper class little caste system of Puerto Rico collaborates, and that's been the history. That's right now they have the PNP, the Partido Nacional Puerto Rico, and the PPD, the Partido Popular Democrático. The PPD and PNP, the two parties.
Okay.
There's no two parties. There's one party, the PLP, the party of lining your pockets, because that's all. That's been the case since the beginning. It's a history of, and it's very difficult to create to have traction to develop a solidarity when your communication with the outside world is being mediated by a caste system,
right?
And they themselves, the elected representatives, and so then the United States can convene and say, well, wait, it's your governor that put this law.
Right.
It's your governor created these subsidies, these 20-year tax breaks for interest, dividend, and capital gains income for high net worth of individuals from the United States that is never extended to Puerto Ricans. So here, I'm going forward. Let me go back to the history. So the farmers are losing their lands. Now you go flash forward like 10 or 20 years, 1920s, 1930s. The Brookings report showed that Puerto Rico was getting the wages now of farmers working as sharecroppers or as just employees on land that was previously theirs. The wages, and Samuel Gompers confirmed this, was less than half than what the Spanish have been paying.
Wow.
Okay, so now
at this point, right? So there's
and so then it's really easy then but we up here, it's out of sight, out of mind. We only get little snippets of information. Even these days, in a media-saturated environment with internet, Puerto Rico only registers on the American radar when there's a hurricane or when there's some disaster.
And politicians go down and visit. And I was going to ask you too. I don't want to try to misdirect you here from your story, but if you can weave that into the American politics and the particularly New York Democratic machine, and again, you were in that assemblyman, so you saw how this worked here in the States. But can you weave that in as well?
Yeah, because we're going to go to P3s and the public-private partnerships, which is all driven by Wall Street directors and
and
Wall Street decision
political associates here.
So now we're getting into the 30s, and you've heard the term that when Wall Street gets a cold, Harlem gets pneumonia. Well, that's sort of because the capitalist system was sort of hanging in the balance at the time before the Bretton Woods, before and before FDR, sort of stabilized things, and they pumped. They changed their philosophy of governance here in the United States, but it never did in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was always the canary in the coal mine. They were just there to be. They've always been an unincorporated territory. In my book, Teddy Roosevelt, Henry Cabot Lodge, FDR, Teddy, just generation after generation saw Puerto Ricans the way they did other darker skinned people to be helped, tamed, educated, and maybe someday they'll have some sort of vision of self-governance, but certainly not now.
No real independence or self-autonomy.
And so, by the way, Puerto Rico had just in 1897, just before the Spanish-American War, had been granted an autonomous government. They had their own local elections for the first time. They had their local parliament. They sat for about 2 months until the cannonades, the United States ships bombed San Juan Harbor. Puerto Rico had a very highly developed culture. They have the oldest governor's mansion in the world, in all the Americas. They have a very strong Catholic tradition. There's a very highly diversified musical cuisine,
dance,
art,
art.
But none of this sort of penetrated the American state of mind. We were seen as, on the floor of U.S. Congress, there were senators and Congress people that were saying that Puerto Ricans were savages. And they totally incapable of self-government and occasionally cannibals. It was that kind of percent, and it went unquestioned. And
then the Great Wave begins in the 40s, right?
Well, let me just get to in the 30s now. We have these centrales, and the four largest ones: Fajardo, Aguirre, East Puerto Rico Sugar, and Guanica. Those four owned half. I told you that banking syndicates own 80%. Just four of those centrales, they were called centrales, these corporate syndicates, owned half the agricultural farmland of Puerto Rico. Yeah. They also own 200 miles of the coastal railroad, about half the utilities, the San Juan seaport. It's a straight out, complete, and it was done incrementally. It was by giving the farmers their loans. All legal, and never with the point of a gun, with a briefcase. But it got to the point, the critical mass was reached where Puerto Ricans themselves start questioning themselves. How did this happen? Are they in fact, do they have some sort of superior? No, they just have better numbers, better technology, they're better organized, and they just grabbed, and they were just ahead of the curve. And the people that finally start realizing this, they have nowhere to go but their own leadership, and their own leadership is collaborating. Now, so let me just go forward. We're under the 30s. So at that point, things got to starvation level where these farmers literally could not feed their children. When you get to that point, the rules start to change because it's no longer a debating society. This is really serious. So they started an island-wide strike, and it got violent. They brought down picketing guards. They had to bring in foreigners because the insular police of Puerto Rico. Everybody knows each other on this island. And so, if the insular policeman is not going to beat on his cousin or because he has to go and deal with his wife that night. Yeah, so that's where the presence of the FBI started accelerating because they had to.
Hoover.
Because what happened is regarding that strike is that the leadership of the FLI, the Federación Liberal de Trabajo, FLT,
and Campos was leading that.
Huh?
Campos?
No, he wasn't leading. Here's what happened. Their own union leadership was selling out the rank and file as, historically, that's been the case in San Juan in exchange for their own little contracts and their own little, appointments. And when the rank and file saw that they were getting sold out and they would get nothing, is when they started casting around for someone that they could trust and someone that had the moxie and the intelligence, and so
they searched him out. Yes, that's an important distinction you make in the book.
So they went to him, and Albizu said, hey, guys, I'm the head of the Nationalist Party here. You guys have to understand that. And they said, look, we can't feed our kids. We believe that we can trust you because when he graduated from Harvard Law School, he got he was offered all sorts of corporate and State Department sinecures. including one from United Fruit. But Albizu Campos turned away from all that. They went back to his hometown of Ponce to open a one-man law firm, basically practice poverty law, because he already had this vision. He said, I have to go down to the ground level with my people, because he came back already a fully formed, with a political and even religious
He
philosophy.
had it made. He could have just really gone into the American system.
Could.
You know, token in a sense, right?
He could have been one of those sellouts. He could,
Gone
always.
to the Supreme Court, first Puerto Rican or whatever. All right, but anyway,
So
they
came
were true
to him, and he negotiated on their behalf,
Right.
and it got violent. They shut down the Puerto Rican economy for about 8 months during the Depression, and United States and Wall Street was expecting this, to be able to extract this. That was one secure source of income that they could use to then finance, some of their other dying ventures.
Yeah.
Right. So
There
was a matter of urgency and alarm for when he graduated in 1918. He went to war, and then he graduated the year after that. Thereafter, 1918. So we're looking about 15 years where he was editorializing, organizing, traveling around all of South America, making as much of a presence of himself as he could. But in Spanish, you say, en su casa lo conocen. They know this guy in his house, and that's it.
Right,
because the United States could care less. They said, whatever, these Puerto Rico, these crazy people, my sugar. And so they didn't. Why bother?
Yeah.
But when he hurt them in the pocketbook, when Albizu Campos was identified as the leader who was able to galvanize this entire island as never had happened before, and they believed in him, they knew they had a problem.
Threat. Yeah.
And within 2 months, they had Albizu Campos in jail, unshackled, on seditious conspiracy against the United States. What was his crime? To represent his own people, because that's what he did, and he did it legally. He did it with NLRB, type of negotiation. He did. And of course, he was smart enough. He had been a captain in the U.S. Army. He rose to the level of captain. That he knew, how to, some of the more forceful and practical aspects of leading an island-wide movement. So the United States knew that we got to deal with this guy. Well, they dealt with him by getting him in jail, and then they had a hung jury the first time because the Puerto Ricans, they had a representative sampling of which is what it's supposed to be. Well,
Right.
The second jury had 10 Americans and 2 Puerto Ricans who were government employees, and then they sent him to Atlanta prison for 9 years. When he comes back, and now in 1940, so now I'm going to go fast forward. He comes back to show you how this pattern developed, and there was a consistency to it. The first thing they did while Albizu Campos was in jail in Atlanta is that they militarized the entire police force, and they brought in a new governor named Blanton Winship, who his history, he wasn't a economic developer, he wasn't a diplomat, he didn't have any international experience. He was a retired Army general whose primary experience was dealing with Native American populations. Blanton Winship understood force, fear, and oppression.
Yeah, he was a military guy, yeah.
And so they brought him, and then they brought in the chief of police,
Riggs.
was E. Francis Riggs, whose father was the owner of the Riggs National Bank, the largest bank in Washington, which in turn had subsidized and destabilized a number of regimes throughout South America over the last, preceding like 20 years. And in fact, the immediately preceding gig that E. Francis Riggs had been engaged in was the assassination of Augusto Sandino in Nicaragua.
Yeah, and you have him quoted
so
here.
he's a chief of, and he is the one. They had a massacre called the Rio Piedras massacre, where they in open air they just assassinated some of the nationals. And
there will be war to the death against all Puerto Ricans.
Yeah. So what Riggs does, he convenes the press. He brings the press of the island. I mean, after that the assassinations of the Rio Piedras massacre, he knew that everybody wants to know what's going on here, what happens next. So he convened the press conference to specifically enunciate those words. If Albizu Campos continues to organize the college students and the macheteros, the sugarcane workers.
So he's like the Bull Connors in a sense. You knew where he stood, and you make that reference too. And now it's, we don't have our Bill Connors as much, of course, but we do have other insidious ways of control.
Yeah, and they were very open and systematic about it. He said there'll be war to the death against all Puerto Ricans. Then what they started was something called the carpetas program. A carpeta is a file, and it's like a precursor to Interpol. Right. By the end of that program that lasted 5 to 6 decades, 2 to 3 generations of Puerto Ricans, they had over 200,000 files, 18 million pages. On and sometimes you'd have a carpeta and you wouldn't even know, and that was actually very oppressive. It was really nefarious because the way that you develop a file is you have to have informants.
Right.
The FBI guys, a lot of them didn't speak Spanish. They had no roots. Everybody was suspicious, and the way you get informants is you start turning one person against another. Puerto Rico, anthropologically, you're a sociologist, you would appreciate the fact that when the Columbus made his second trip. He landed first in Puerto Rico on his second voyage. The Taíno Indians, first of all, they'd never seen muskets, fire-breathing, horses, these Spanish galleons coming over the horizon. So they were, kind of intimidated, but they were very gregarious and generous. They said they showed him some nuggets of gold, and Columbus' eyes popped, and he said, Oh yeah, they showed them where they had a vein coming down off the mountains and then the Spanish mined it so completely that within about 30, 40 years, there's not much left. But they said, here, go, take what you want. And that was a big mistake, right? Because what Ponce de Leon came over and what the regime that they installed, forced every Taíno to work from the age 14 up, and they would have to produce a hawk's bell of gold, about this much of gold a month, or they get their hands chopped off. I'm sorry, I'm getting
this is.
But where we are now is in Puerto Rico now.
Right.
Albizu Campos goes to jail, and during that time, the same kind of oppression, but now it's a little more sophisticated. It's information suppression. They have this carpetas program, and in addition, Blanton Winship starts bringing over FBI agents, and as you know, the FBI at that time was they knew how to, in some corporations, you extend your reach by color coding your file cabinets and pushing those file cabinets out to the lawn and just, pushing your presence. Or in a dinner conversation, you move the salt shaker forward and forward. All these, well, that's what the FBI would do. They would encourage. J. Edgar Hoover knew how to infiltrate and extend his presence so much that he almost became, a political figure, a worldwide dictator unto himself, and it really behooved
he could control everybody. Yeah.
And it behooved the people in the ruling class of Puerto Rico because they could just bring more FBI agents and more FBI agents, and they're the ones that were creating these carpetas. So between the carpetas program, the militarization of the police force, and the presence of the FBI, Puerto Rico, I have a feeling that affected the Puerto Rican character. From being generous and gregarious because you have such an abundance of everything. It's a Garden of Eden. Into, a little more, a little nitpicky, a little more more sense of community was fractured.
Paranoid, perhaps.
Yeah, and so because you never knew who was, was quién estaba choteando quién, and so the way you started is the police would bring in Felipe and say, Felipe, you're no good. We know you. We know your family and everything, but did you know, Jose, what he's saying about you? Because in addition, when Albizu Campos went to jail, when he came back, they created something called Public Law 53. Well, I think it was 53 or 50. I'm 52? Sorry. Was it?
52.
Public Law 52, which was modeled on the Smith Act in the United States, the Anti-Communist Smith Act, which made it a felony, punishable by up to 10 years in jail for enunciating any word, saying a word, singing a song, distributing a flyer, anything that was any word against the United States or in favor of Puerto Rican
so that Puerto Rico becomes this testing grounds for things that were used all around the world too.
And they abrogated the First Amendment. These are citizens now. They abrogated the entire First Amendment for a whole island of people to shut one guy up, Albizu Campos.
Yeah, amazing.
And so that's how openly and aggressively and without any remorse or whatever, the United States dealt with Puerto Rico to achieve and maintain their own ends. And these things were not evident to me. Just to backtrack a little personally, I became interested in this when when I saw that Alviso Campos didn't exist in Harvard, in the Widener Library. And I had family in Caguas and other places that had been nationalists. So when I would go to vacation in Puerto Rico sometimes, I would talk to them. And so there was this process.
Right. So you began to learn by talking to the people.
Yeah. And so in a sense, I was preparing for this book without knowing it. So you like 20 or 30 years of preparation.
Yeah. So you're getting the dossiers, in a sense, from the people directly.
Then when I saw the dossiers, because Congressman Jose Serrano was able to get the FBI director, Luis Free, at the time, because he was a ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee, which had jurisdiction over the FBI's budget. So sometimes politics, can yield a positive result. They declassified those 18 million pages of documents, and when I saw that is when I got curious. I foiled the Freedom of Information law, some of the information, and I saw all these FBI documents and very heavily redacted. And I saw the kind of thing that they were saying, that just open libel and slander. They were just destroying lives, without compunction. Yeah. And then that reminded me of what happened to me with my father. Absolutely. And so that is at that point is
there
when
you go.
Right. There's a book here. There's a story here that is not on any bookshelf. It's just
and not just your story, of course.
No.
Obviously, millions.
And so that is what I went. I'm not, all my life I haven't been very disciplined, but I'm really good at obsession. And so I became really obsessed with this.
Well, you must have been somewhat disciplined. I mean, you went to Yale Law School. Come on now, give yourself more credit on that. You wrote,
the only thing harder than getting into Yale Law School is flunking out.
Yeah,
and I tested that.
Well, that's true, yeah. I mean, no, but no, and this is not just, you've got, how many pages of notes and appendixes? This is a scholarly work. This is. I want to tell you something here. This is the first time we've done this show for now almost eight years. We've got only 2 or 3 minutes left.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
No. You're going to be
mean streak here.
No. Wait a minute. I've never done this in a show before, but I want.
You're going to pay me to come back?
We can work something out, maybe. Would you? We still got some time. I want you to finish with some of your points, but there's so much more to talk about. Would you be willing to come? Can we come back?
Yeah, I apologize because I know that I've been talking
please, over you. Listen, and maybe we'll get Felipe to come.
We're gonna tie Felipe down. We're gonna.
Okay. Well, how about next? I've got an opening next week or the following week.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is on?
No.
All right.
I'll do it. I mean, we'll just pick up where we left off, and you apologize to your audience for me.
No, they're
but there is a really dense.
Okay.
Can I just leave with one thing here?
You can do it.
Right now, let me just leave with this. There's something called P3s, public-private partnerships.
Okay.
And Puerto Rico are P5s, public-private partnerships for the plunder of Puerto Rico. First, Puerto Rico was a naval coaling station. Then it became this one-crop cash cow economy. Then it became a 20-year tax breaks over interest, dividend, capital gains income, especially for the pharmaceuticals. At one point, Puerto Rico was producing 25% of the world's pharmaceutical drugs.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was the 936, the IRS 936 exception. Now, the deal is when Puerto Rico went under, when the 936 lapsed, all these Wall Street bond traders came in with these very creative financial instruments, credit default swaps, and they injected Puerto Rico with an entirely new level of debt, knowing full well that it was unconstitutional, but it exceeded the debt ceiling that was.
And it's the same damn thing that happened up here. Right? In the States in 2007 or whenever it was.
In New York or in Washington?
Yeah, in New York, in Washington.
Yeah. Well,
so it was
they brought a financial control board. But the difference being that it's a financial control board that was from within its own universe. It was a financial. This is one government imposing a financial control board on an island that's been victimized, and I'll talk about the next time. What the nature of that it's like a Ponzi scheme where 83% of a succession of Series AA bonds were used not to pay infrastructure repair, salaries, purchase of oil for prepa, the oil, but to pay, and not even to pay the capital on the antecedent debt, to pay the interest on the preceding loan. 83%.
Yes, never ending.
Okay, so now, but now and I'll leave with this, is that these P3s, these public-private partnerships, what they're doing, they're taking the public infrastructure of Puerto Rico, hospitals, schools, the public lands that are the government, and they're using them as collateral for these debts. So now they'll turn the public infrastructure of Puerto Rico into one giant ATM for Wall Street.
Deeper and deeper.
And that's where it's headed.
Thank you so very, very much. Nelson, it is a pleasure, honor. This is a terrific, terrific book. Please get it. And we'll see you again next week on The Radical Imagination. Thank you again.
Get him out of here! Hello, my name is Rogelio Yola, and I'm looking for a job.
Yes, he's in the department.
I have a college degree from the Instituto Tecnológico de Santo Domingo, and I'm willing to work very hard. I am very well known in the neighborhood. I love New York, and I have excellent reference. Your call is very important to me. Please leave a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. The one thing that drove my life was coming to America. The land of opportunities, the land of the free, where all men are created equal. I am willing to travel, work overtime, and my salary, no problem. I will work with your budget. In fact, any offer at this point is a great offer. I'm fully bilingual with strong skills in computer, and I love to cook lasagna. I'm also a firm believer in the words of the great Ronald Reagan.
The past few days, when I've been at that window upstairs, I've thought a bit of the shining city upon a hill. The phrase comes from John Winthrop, who wrote it to describe the America he imagined. What he imagined was important because he was an early pilgrim, an early freedom man. He journeyed here on what today we'd call a little wooden boat. And like the other pilgrims, he was looking for a home that would be free. I've spoken of the shining city all my political life, but I don't know if I ever quite communicated what I saw when I said it. But in my mind, it was a tall, proud city built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace. A city with free ports that hummed with commerce and creativity. And if there had to be city walls, the walls had doors, and the doors were open to anyone with the will and the heart to get here.